Okay. Hey everybody, it's been a little while since we've done one of these, but Inside Star Citizen is back. It's looking like with a new format, a little bit longer than normal, so this might be a long one. Sit down, kick your shoes off, call out of work. Let's jump right into it. I fear this one is about Gen 12, which means hopefully my buddy Sylvan will be doing it, and the underground facilities. Two things. Gen 12, solid. Really happy to hear about it. I hope this is going to be a thorough review about some of the stuff that it'll allow them to do and maybe what they can do after they've gotten Gen 12 into the game with Vulcan.
Hello.
And then I'm really hoping that the underground facilities, we do get to see at least something white box. I feel like at this point we've gotten to the where the locations team isn't showing anything that's more than like 12 to 18 months out or so. I'm hoping this is something that we could at least theorize is coming next year. I think that they've gotten better at bringing these things along. So I look forward to hearing what we're going to hear about the underground facilities. I don't think it's going to be another 3 to 6 years for them, though.
Hello, my name is John Griffiths. I'm a lead environment artist here at Star Citizen at Cloud Imperium. Hi, my name is John Griffiths, and I'm a lead environment artist at Cloud Imperium Games. I'm heading up EU Sandbox 2, and we're working on the revamped underground facilities, which you saw at CitizenCon. This is also my first ISC episode, and it's also the first in our lovely new office. So
nice,
I hope you enjoy.
Gets to roll in the new office with them. That's pretty cool.
So
further
after
underground.
Gone through that kind of concept development phase where we're just...
We only go so far underground, yet so many problems. Hopefully further doesn't bring more glitches.
Ideas. It's time to kind of think about what actually the underground facilities are going to be. How much time is the player going to be spending there? What are they going to be doing there? How many they're going to be? What kind of themes they're going to be? All that jazz we need to think about, and we also need to plan out how we're going to do it. So when we're in the stage of very early on in development, it's about kind of iterating quickly, getting into the editor, getting feedback on what we're doing, playing the location as a complete thing as fast as possible. Because only when we see things in context of what they're going to be can we really make actual...
These are like full-on dungeons. Jeez, this is like a full level in a normal game.
Great decisions on what it is we're making. And this...
Maybe, yeah, a full level.
This is a collaboration between art and design, mission content. The directors are involved. It's just molding the beast into something tangible, which we can then take into our planning stage to iron out what it is we need to create and how we're going to create them.
Getting some Half-Life vibes, because it's underground.
So we come out
it's like
of pre-production.
Anything underground is Half-Life.
We now need to get a plan together so that the team can start working. So at the moment we can see all these boxes. All the ones on the top are rooms, all the ones underneath.
All right, so for a second, this is all tier 0. So it sounds like they're still doing tier 0 in terms of locations, at least. We've talked about all that Squadron 42 stuff. I wonder if they're going to talk about any other tiers, though.
Our overlays. So overlays give us that variety.
Or maybe this is a different type of tier. We'll see.
The team looks at this. They don't have to come to me to ask, does the surface structure medium need work doing to it or not?
Hold on. I'm sorry. I got to understand what we're seeing. So Zone 1, they talked about the different zones during the CitizenCon demonstration. Zone 1, I believe, was the top area. Looks like that's what it's saying here. And really, it just looks like these are different types of Zone 1s. Okay, that's pretty straightforward.
Ask, does the surface structure medium need work doing to it or not? They can read it for themselves here. This is great because it gives us a big overview of what's required for the location. And it also means that we can break it down into kind of content packs.
Holy crap.
Our tier 0 is everything that we would need to release this into the universe with some variation. Our tiers after that.
Tier 1, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to get back to this at the end of this segment, but lots to say about how much effort they're putting into underground facilities now. Some theories.
Kind of our additional content, which might flesh out some of the UGFs or give it a new theme or that kind of thing. So some of the rooms that are in production at the moment, let's just skip over to them. So this looks like one whole thing. It's actually two things. So it's the surface structure, which is this guy in the middle, and this kind of surrounding hangar. You know, how do you actually get there? We've also got our physical elevator spaces. So if we go from the top, this is where you try.
They haven't done this style of ISC in a while. I do enjoy this. I loved when they used to do this, more when it was around the verse. But it's nice to see them just showing it off right there on the camera or on the computer, and this feels better produced too.
Down into the UGF on a lovely diagonal elevator. We've got the elevator shaft components themselves, so you might have really long elevator rides, you might have really short ones.
Oh
and
boy.
Then where you end up at the bottom of the elevator ride, you know.
More elevator rides. All right, what are we looking at here? I said this before during CitizenCon, but this part of these underground bunkers reminds me of the level on Halo 2 at the beginning of the game when you're in the space station. You have to take that long elevator ride down. This is some really in-depth looking stuff, though.
This room is currently in progress as well. This is a more refined plan to begin with, but we still need to get into the actual numbers of how much time this will actually take to make. So then we come to our trusty Microsoft Excel.
Oh boy.
And in here, this is just putting estimates on how long we think things will take. So for us, that's
how long does that say? Where's the total? These are man hours, I'm assuming.
In this next phase, which is white boxing, we want to block the rooms out. We want to add content. We want to get the gameplay in there. We want to split things into overlays, test it with our ProcGen tool, and get all that done. So we estimate this like this, and we put in all of those rooms that we called out before. We've
Show
got
us
all the room types it can be.
1,255 hours.
And how big or small the thing is. So using this kind of grid, we can call out, well, there's one room that's got a retheme, there's 2 rooms which are medium or large that need to be done, and this calculates how much time is required. So you can look at it from room type, you can do the time that way, or you can look at how many medium rooms it will take. You know, we can do it that way as well. This calculates it all, puts into a lovely little table, and then we can also call out how many artists there are, how many designers, how many days per artist, how many.
So zone 3s are freaking massive. Look at the time difference in creating zone 3 in tiers 0, 1, 2, and 3. There's going to be so much more going on down there. So the idea, it looks like, is that the beginning segment is actually not super in-depth compared to the other ones. It looks like they're just being, at least between tier 1 and tier 2, being a little bit off. Just a lot of time going into tier 3 and then a little less into tier 2, but wow.
Total days for a sprint, blah, 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 get all of
Oh,
these
I'm
per
sorry.
artist.
That shows your, so here's our teams. Here's our members. So this is 6 total members, days per artist, 8 days per designer. Okay, so total days 22 per sprint. So they're just multiplying the number of each type of dev out by the days that they would work in a sprint to get the total amount of days that are worked every sprint, milestone days, milestones per year. Total milestones per year, 6.5. I'm not a pro at this. Not a doctor. Don't really know exactly what a milestone is. I know kind of vernacular what sprint is. It looks like a milestone is made up of multiple sprints. So maybe a milestone is completing one tier or something like that. I don't really know. But total days for all tiers is 2,500 days for all tiers. That's very interesting. I'm not going to do the math on how that breaks down, but 2,500 people power days over the course of, gosh, I don't know. That's probably a couple of years at least, 2 to 3 years, I would say. But if we're talking tier 0, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, remember that each of those tiers, for instance, the underground bunkers we have right now are tier 0 bunkers. Those we haven't seen those change almost at all, besides putting in the spawn closets and the turrets on top. But besides that, those are tier 0 bunkers. So if we could see those on their own within 1,255 hours, it looks like the other tiers actually don't come that far after. So maybe not that far along, or not that far away.
Just how many total days.
This is also, remember, spread across how many? 6 people. It's actually not that many people working on these. 6 is a smaller amount than I would have expected.
For a sprint, blah, 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 get all of that done. and that gives us our kind of ballpark figure to go with to begin with. I think I might have to retake this.
No. You're doing good. At what point do we ignore all? At what point do we ignore all this?
It's like, when do we add 3 extra quarters onto the end of this?
Okay, so it's all great having all of this, and it gives us a really good plan to begin with going forwards. But as you probably know, game development isn't really a concrete process. You can have all the numbers in the world, but you'll still have things that kind of crop up out of nowhere. That is what game development really is. So from this point now, we can get back into the editor, we can start fleshing out these rooms, we can start doing these overlays, we can start finding the variety and really bringing these new underground facilities to life.
I wish they would have a label as to what stage this is at. I don't know if this is actually white box. It does look like it's in editor, in game engine, and things are working. I'm sure somebody will let me know in the comments, but because this looks fairly well developed. I mean, so one of the conversations that was happening on Reddit was somebody saying we wouldn't be getting sneak peeks for this for a while. Other people were saying, well, they've shown that they kind of have started to work on locations better. And I think the fact of the matter here is that, like, clearly this is something that's already being worked on. This isn't a far off in the distance concept or something we should be expecting multiple years down the line. So I would love to see more kind of detailed information about what stage they're at here. At least gray box or white box or something like that.
Variety and really bringing these new underground facilities to life.
The new underground facilities, first seen at this year's CitizenCon showcase, have already moved into production, with designers and artists alike building out the currently spec'd out 93 different rooms and 196 overlay variations necessary to place them throughout the existing Stanton and upcoming Pyro stars.
It's going to be weird seeing those in Pyro. Okay, theory. These seem like they're going to be a huge part of the game and take some of the gameplay that you would expect in like factories and other stuff. I'm wondering if they realized the ability to have this much content underground would help with like rendering or maybe loading in stuff when you're near planets or flying over planets. I don't know. It seems like this would be a great way to kind of pocket away gameplay so that you don't necessarily have to instance that area, but it doesn't have to suffer from being inside of, like, it's not just some random place out in space where people are flying past and they'll have to be updating it and everything and be in the same server and all that stuff. I don't know. We'll see what they do with the settlements and stuff, but it feels like they're kind of leaning towards pushing more gameplay towards these underground facilities, which is cool as long as they're well built and they have good story and like they're more than just shooting spree FPS mission locations. Like, these need to be things that we can do that are not just combat focused. I'm down for it. I'm looking forward to some more progress reports on that throughout the next year.
System. But while that's still many months away yet, let's go ahead and turn our attention to something coming in this December's Alpha 3.18.
Ooh.
The imminent arrival of the next exciting parts of our new Gen 12 renderer.
Yes!
Now, bringing with it our collective hopes for improved performance, let's go now to Sylvan in our Frankfurt studio, who's got an update for us on the current progress.
If homie doesn't mention VR, I'll be disappointed. Do it. Drop the V word.
Hey everyone, I'm Sylvan. I'm engine programmer here at CRG, working on Gen 12 for the past years, and I'm incredibly excited to share with all of you the latest progress we've made on Gen 12. But first, let's get everyone on the same page real quick and explain what Gen 12 is, what it's not, and what it's trying to solve.
Are we doing some OChem over there on the whiteboard? It looks like molecular structures.
This will just scratch the surface though. For a deeper look, I highly recommend watching our last year's CitizenCon progress update on Gen 12 and Vulkan. So Gen 12 in a nutshell is our new renderer, and we came up with this name as a natural step forward from DirectX 11, which Star Citizen right now pretty much all of you are using when playing the game. DirectX 11 is a graphics API which our engine interacts to make use of the GPU and renders all of Star Citizen's beauty.
I don't like that thing's sticking around in the corner. For us B-roll junkies, it's going to show up in all the videos now.
How fast a game engine can feed the graphics API or the GPU with rendering commands is dependent on two factors. First, the CPU performance, and second, the implementation of the rendering engine. And the latter is what Gen 12 is all about. It is from the ground up a complete redesign of our old rendering architecture, which decreases CPU submission time massively. The end goal of Gen 12, however, is to make use of a new graphics API called Vulkan, which will boost performance even more and also allows us to add new cool features like AI scaling, ray tracing, efficient multi-view rendering for VR, and Linux
He did it! Take it, dude, I knew it.
support, and more. This meant, however, we had to rewrite every single graphics feature and ensure that it's running smoothly and as expected on this new architecture.
This is like a really...
Daunting?
That was not a great pause point. This is like one of those things. It's not true with all of Star Citizen. You'll hear people say it. Oh, they've been building the tools. That's why it's taken so long. That's not all the truth. They've clearly had plenty of problems in terms of management, in terms of scaling, in terms of projections. But there are some situations where you can tell that the time that it took was dependent on some of the bigger tools and things that needed to be done. And the engine's like one of those places where it's actually true. The rendering engine being made, I feel like is such a big milestone for this game. It seems like something that's really going to help, not just on the player side with the performance and stuff, but in terms of them actually starting to have real graphics options for us, being able to actually change our game settings so that we can say, oh, I wanted to play at this level, or I wanted to, target performance or fidelity or stuff like that. That's real game stuff. We haven't gotten that before. This is going to be really nice to finally get to see in the game.
Task, which takes years in a game like Star Citizen with its hundreds of different shaders, thousands of materials, and dozens of features actively used in production.
Wow, that was a cool shot.
You've seen our first milestone mid last year, 2021, with patch 3.14, when we had a few post-processing effects running on Gen 12 by default. This proved that our new rendering architecture was working as intended, and we could start heavily focusing on the scene object rendering, which is the biggest and the most time-consuming task for Gen 12.
Them clouds.
Almost a year later, with 3.17, we hit our next big milestone and could turn on Gen 12 for all our static geometry, including all scattered terrain objects. That was also the time when a lot of people saw an actual meaningful performance improvement in Star Citizen. Although, to be fair, that patch, Gen 12, was just one of many optimizations we employed there. The thing is, since then, the engine is running in a sort of mixed mode, which means most of the code is running through legacy and just calls into Gen 12, which is ported and works at the moment.
Oh, turtle.
This actually adds an additional overhead and is the reason why I didn't expect anything of a big performance improvement the last patch, and we didn't show anything or didn't announce anything. But I'm happy to announce, and very proud, that we're nearly done with porting absolutely everything to Gen 12, and not
Happy
just
to hear
the
it.
scene object rendering, but also our new path-centric rendering system. As we speak, we're fixing the last few things to get it fully ready for 3.18.
That's him. That's him right there. That's it. That's what he's doing. We're speaking and he's finishing.
This is not
Probably
a
not.
promise, but we're working hard to make it possible. Also keep in mind that this first version of Gen 12 is just a it just works version. We haven't even started optimizing it yet at all, and you can expect huge improvements the following patches up until we can finally start making use of Vulkan. Enough talking, let's hop into the engine and take a look at a couple scenes while I'm explaining a few things to set reasonable expectations. Keep in mind that all of these tests are done in debug builds with one set of hardware and can result in a totally different experience on a different machine. Also note that Gen 12 primarily boosts CPU performance, so if you have a weak GPU or playing in very high resolutions, which is really demanding for GPUs, your game is probably GPU bound and you won't see much of a benefit. Okay,
I just want to get more than 30 frames per second.
so let's take a look at the scene here in Orson, which is well known to be one of the most expensive cities in game right now. Before we start, please do me one favor and don't look at the FPS, because this is a highly unoptimized build with highly unoptimized code and very expensive debug tracking. So any discussion about FPS here is completely meaningless. All right.
That's what I say whenever I'm playing.
So on the right side,
Save
we have
myself
this
the pain.
D3D API call info window, which tells us precisely how many draw calls and how many API calls we do every frame. This is the work the engine has to do to send commands to the graphics driver, which determines how fast the CPU can feed the GPU with commands to render our frame. This is pure legacy mode. We have 47,000 API calls, and let's switch it to Gen 12.
Ooh.
So this is Gen 12 mode. The API
I say ooh, but I don't actually know what that quantifiably means.
calls drop to about 33,000, which is quite significant for literally rendering the same scene. Okay, let's take a closer look behind the scenes. Well, let's take a look at this optic capture from that scene on
Oh
Orson.
my gosh.
Optic is a very helpful tool for us developers to get a very detailed understanding of what's going on in our engine. This includes what every thread is doing and when it is doing it. So let's take a look at the main and render thread, which are relevant for us in this context. Let's zoom in. And let's take a look at one of those frames.
This is freaking wizardry. I mean, I'm sure plenty of you who are watching are also involved in some kind of this stuff. I tried coding for a little bit. Oh my gosh.
So at the top, we've got the main thread. The main thread is what you could say the heart of the whole engine. It pretty much orchestrates everything, like when entities get updated, when physics get calculated, when do we render, and so forth. One of the main tasks is to figure out which objects are in our view frustum and which objects we want to render. This is what the main thread does on top of here. Once we figure that out, all that work is pushed into a queue to be processed by the render thread. At the bottom, we've got the render thread. And this is a very CPU intensive task, which is why it is leveraged by a completely dedicated thread. So what we can see here is that the render thread takes an immense amount of time to process one frame. In fact, it's so long that it even surpasses the work the main thread has to do. In this context, it means we are render thread bound, which means if we optimize the render, if we get it to run faster, we will see more FPS on the screen.
That makes sense.
As long as we are not GPU bound. So let's take a look at a Gen 12 frame. So here we've got a Gen 12 frame. Now the opposite is the case. The render thread
So the render thread in the last one, if you missed it, I think it was in the 50s or the 60s.
runs faster than the main thread, which is indicated by this red bar here at the end. This means the render thread has to wait for the main thread to finish.
Which is good, right?
And Hence, in render thread bound scenarios, as long as we're not bound by the GPU, we will see an FPS increase. And if we zoom out here, we can see that every frame, the render thread is quite faster than the main thread. And yeah.
I feel like this is like perfect music for this. I'm feeling like this bubbling sense of warmth at the idea of faster frames in the music. It's just like, yeah, Space Tomato's super happy.
It's up to 20 milliseconds
Someday.
on some frames. Whereas in Legacy, yeah, the opposite is the case, and the main thread has to wait. To summarize, with the current Gen 12 renderer, we saw a tremendous amount of API call reduction than before, and depending on the seed, 50 to 100% faster render thread performance. Let me emphasize again that all these numbers are not final, and we haven't been optimizing Gen 12 at all yet, and you can expect more improvements in the future. It also depends highly on the hardware you're running at, so once it hits live and you're using it, let me know how it's working for you. So what's coming next, you may ask? Well, once we're fully done with Gen 12 and we can actually run Vulkan, there's still a lot of optimizations we have to do, like actually completely getting rid of the render thread, employ a fully multi-threading rendering approach, doing async compute, and so much more. The sky's the limit here. And since we're developing Vulkan in parallel at the moment, it is to be expected that once Gen 12 is fully working, it won't take long for you to have it in your hands too. But more about that in the future when it's actually ready. Last but not least, a big shout out to everyone involved in getting Gen 12 ready so far. And yeah, I hope you like this little sneak peek into the future of Star Citizen's rendering engine. And feel free to drop any questions in Spectrum, and I'll gladly do my best to answer them. Thanks.
So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that resource planning is an essential step to ensuring your artists and designers are working efficiently to deliver locations like the new underground facilities quicker than ever before. That the new underground facilities themselves are already in production, and you can bet we'll be following along with their progress ahead of their scheduled release next year. And that the new Gen 12...
Okay, there you go. So they're scheduled to release next year. I'm guessing they're actually aiming for them to come with 4.0, since that was part of their feature reveal at CitizenCon. But good to know. They're in production. They're scheduled for next year. This is a location that we are expected to see updates throughout the next year until release. Kind of like we saw with, I would say, things like the river system. We saw those first in 2021, got them about a year and a quarter later in 2022. The derelict system, we started to see teased, I believe. Actually, that was maybe the beginning of this year or the end of last year. And then we saw them mid this year. Same with the derelict outposts. This is what I was talking about with the locations. They're starting to get better about starting the production, getting their heads around it, and then starting to talk about it, which is just so much better. And they actually, they move along at a pace. Thank you, locations teams.
Renderer looks to relieve much of the current CPU bottleneck in the persistent universe, and that work will still continue after the next major milestone in the upcoming Alpha 3.18. Now don't forget that this year's Day of the Vara Halloween festivities are going on right now. You can check out all the details on the robertspaceindustries.com website. And if you're looking at what this new set and wondering what the heck's going on, maybe you should check out this year's CitizenCon 2952 full broadcast, which is available now on both our Twitch and YouTube channels. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee, broadcasting from inside the only constant. We'll see you back here next week.
The sets are crazy. Honestly, it's the offices that are actually crazy. They're a lot. But that was a good episode. I like that. I hope this is how Inside Star Citizen stays consistently with these double features, looking at stuff that's pretty important and integral to the gameplay that we're going to be seeing within the next year. Underground facilities, I've already talked enough about. I think that they are a great opportunity for gameplay that goes outside of fighting and shooting. Talk about resource management, being able to go down there and actually do some work. Maybe refinery outposts in there. Maybe some mining stuff that goes on in the bottom of there. Maybe even some deeper, darker caves that connect to something else. You could get a lot. You could get really custom in there, and it's great that they're underground. And I think maybe that will help with things like rendering and making sure that they get a better budget. That's actually something I didn't think about. They might get a lot better lighting and VFX budgets down there because they don't have to worry about ship lights going overhead. They don't have to worry about the changing day and night cycle. Maybe that's going to help them a lot more with optimizing the actual space itself. Gen 12 is also great to see because that's our first real optimization starting to come into the game. Many more people are going to start to see over 30 frames per second. Many more people even still will start to see 60 plus frames per second. So that's really good. And obviously it's kind of a forebearer to things like ray tracing, global illumination, DLSS, maybe FSR and stuff like that. As well as Vulkan support, playing on Linux, stuff like that. So happy to hear another update on that from Sylvan. It's really nice to finally get another update on Gen 12. I hope it's good what we see from it in 3.18, and it sounds like they'll have their hands full going past that, and we'll probably have to wait a little while longer for some really true optimizations. But clearly, they've got their heads just into the optimization. They're actually thinking about it, and they've got plans for it, which I think is really good to hear, and bring some peace to the people, at least to me. God, I need more than 30 frames. Anyways, see you guys next week. Thanks for coming. Have a good one.